And you just got to think closer together, closer to the ground, with lower pressures, ultimately in every single case equals higher efficiency. But then too, you also have to understand that there is a limit to the intake capacity of every single soil. There's also a limit to the crop use of water in every single crop. So if you really get down and if you'll work with your extension guys and you look at what the actual crop use, water use is for whatever crop that you're going to grow, and you can run numbers all day long, but what you will find is that 6 gallons per minute per irrigated acre, you can grow any crop that you want to grow, including sugar cane and lettuce. And that includes cotton and corn. Every single crop. So anything over 6 gallons per minute per acre, you've got more water than you need. Well, what the flip side of that whole 6 gallons per minute per acre is there's a limit to the intake capacity of every single soil out there. And in general, the maximum that you can get in, and I've yet to find a soil that will accept more than 6 gallons per minute per irrigated acre. That seems to be the max that you can get into any soil out there. And you have to do some things as far as residue management, maybe some furrow diking if you're still running a cultivator sweep through a crop, but leave the residue there and hold the water in place with the residue, and it does make a difference. And so anything over that, and we find a lot of that as you get up into some of southwest Kansas where they still have a little better water. If you get over into central Kansas, if you get into some of the southeast Arizona areas, well, they've got 8 gallons per minute per acre, or they've got 10 gallons per minute per acre. So we need to use it. Well, they can use it, but the first thing they do is they raise the drops up, spread them out, and get more soak time, so they can evaporate it all off and get rid of it, so they can get back to the 6 gallons per minute per acre, because the crop can't use more than that, and the soil won't take more than that. So, you know, it's and you can run numbers on that stuff, but I'll just about tell you that you can't find a scenario that it won't work in. And so in every single case, you know, when you're germinating a crop, you over-apply water. Every single one of you guys over-applies water. And I know that because if you'll take whatever seed that you're going to germinate and put it into a paper towel and put a little water on it, I'll bet you it'll sprout. And look at the inches of water that we put on. We just need to be a little smarter and a little better about how we put it on. Okay? As you close that spacing down, there's a guy that certainly knew better. I was telling some folks this story a little earlier today. He knew better. He farms a lot of circles and stuff, and he'd gone to IWABs, and he was absolutely certain that IWABs were the best nozzle that was ever made on the face of the earth. And he said the coolest part about it is when he drives down the road, he can tell if there's a nozzle stopped up with that IWAB. I said, okay, so what happens if you have low drift nozzles or D3000 spray heads? He said, well, you got to get out and walk that thing, and I don't like walking it. I said, well, so really what you're saying is, and this is really something I want y'all to understand, when you spread it out and you raise it up so you can see it, that's all for convenience. You're giving up 10, 15, 20% of your water for convenience. Okay, well, you can get around that because filtration is an option. And any of the drip guys will tell you that filtration is an option, because they don't make much water that doesn't have some kind of junk in it that you need to get out. And all you have to do is filter it down to the size of that smallest nozzle. Once you get it filtered down to the size of that smallest nozzle, it will go through the nozzle and it'll work. So then the next thing is okay, you put the machine out there and you get it up and running and you think, man, I've hit a home run. And there are very, very few producers that understand that the lifetime of those orifices is a finite number. You know, there is a point in time that orifice will have run enough stuff through it that it will be bigger than it originally was. And that number, depending upon how much sand you're pumping and how much runtime you have and stuff, is going to be 5 to 7 years. And at that point in time, you really need to put a new orifice in there. And remember, I said a new orifice, because there are a whole bunch of folks that go out and they re-nozzle their pivots, and they may re-nozzle 5 or 6 times in a year. But how many times did they actually go in and put new orifices in instead of just moving them around and adding a few extra ones? And they usually bought the used ones over at the dealership, and that's what they filled in with. You know, that's not replacing your orifices. That's just re-nozzling. But when you go through and you replace those orifices, you can get that machine back to tip-top shape. I talked to a producer in Kansas a few months ago, and he had a machine that had been out like 17 years. Still running with the exact same pressure regulators that it came with. They also have a finite life. They will only last so long. And that number, depending upon the same factors of how much junk and how much pressure and how much water goes through them, is going to once again be between 5 and 7, maybe as much as 10 years if you're lucky. But you can put a pressure gauge over the top of that regulator, and you can put a pressure gauge over the bottom of it. It has to have the orifice and the nozzle still on there so that there's water flow going through. And if it's within a pound, half pound to a pound of where it was at, if it could be a little more, you know, you're in good shape. But if it gets over that, then there's more water going through it. And then it starts affecting how much water's going through the orifice. And so all of that stuff gets to being worn orifices and worn nozzles, and then pretty quick, instead of putting 10% more on than you thought you were, you're putting 15, 20% more through that nozzle, and you think, you know, it looks good. Well, it's still kind of even, but it's all worn out. And you just can't keep running worn equipment. You will have to maintain the sprinklers. You got to maintain all of the drivetrain, but you also have to maintain that sprinkler package, because that's the heart and soul of what you bought. So you have to take care of it. But you know, you can also extend the life of all of those orifices and regulators just by putting a filter in front of it. And as our water volumes go down, we have more and more of those small orifices, and so filtration becomes more and more into what you need to do. Now, you can, depending upon how much water you're running through it and kind of how you do it, you're looking at $1,500, maybe $2,500 on a machine, on a quarter miler, to put on filters. And some of that relates to how much junk's in the water that you got to get out. The less junk you have, the less filter you have to have. More junk, the more filter. And so as long as you're within 5 to 10% of what your design is supposed to be on your pressure regulators, you're good. But once you get past that, you really need to seriously consider replacing those regulators, and you certainly, on a regular basis, you need to re-tip the machine. You need to put new orifices in, and they're not that expensive. I'm going to stop before I get into monitoring and see if anybody has any questions relating to nozzles, regulators, spacings, and that kind of stuff. Okay, well, we'll go on into the monitoring stuff. Monitoring, you know, why do you want to monitor? You know, you kind of get down to, most of you guys are using guidance systems now. Well, it's one of those nebulous things. You're not really sure exactly how it works, but you know that it makes you a little more productive and a little more efficient, and you know it pays out. Well, that's kind of where you're at with the monitoring stuff. And it's just like you wouldn't plant a crop with a big planter without having monitors on it. So why do you want to go out and run sprinklers and irrigation systems without monitors on them? Because other than that, all you're doing is getting snapshots just whenever you drive by. You know, and one of my favorite things on monitoring is the guy that says, well, I don't need a monitor. It's that machine's just right there next to my house. Well, the assumption is he's at home all day, every day. And somewhere in that, I missed the point. But you know, but there are things that happen when you monitor. You reduce your downtime. Your field issues are reduced because you can speed up through a boggy spot, and you can slow down where you need to. You know, if you got something that needs a little help, you can put some things together there. And then once again, you know, if your downtime goes down, then your field issues get reduced, because one of the things that we've learned through history is that pivots don't break down right before you get there. They break down right after you left. And then what happens? If you don't have a well kill on, they just sit there and run in one spot until you get back around, whether that's 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And then where's the spot in the field that you have trouble from then on? Same spot. That's where you break your gearboxes, tear up your equipment. You have a crop that's rank there, and the rest of the field starved for water while it sat there and ran in one place for 8 or 12 hours. So that's how you're improving your crop uniformity, because you keep your uptime up and your downtime down. You get some labor savings just because, you know, you reduce the amount of torn up equipment more than anything else, just because you know. You should be able to reduce your fuel consumption and reduce the amount of trouble with your equipment having to go through those trouble spots, because you should be able to actually get a little downtime. In most years, not this last year, but at least you were able to keep your uptime up. And then you should be able to get better crop growth and yield response. There's water savings. And then to follow behind that, you know, why do you want to do control as well as monitoring? So that you can improve your application efficiency. It makes it easier to program your control panels. It helps you in numerous different ways. But take home on monitoring and control is, in general, if you really keep track of it, it's worth a 10 to a 15% improvement in where you're at with your water. You can save that much, or you'll get that much more beneficial use out of it, depending upon how limited that resource is, or if it's not limited, you should be able to have more downtime. Any questions on this? I know I kind of ran through it pretty quick, but and all of those monitoring and control systems, anything worth its salt today is available via your computer. It's available on your smartphone, an iPad or a tablet, anything like that. Anywhere you can get a web connection, you should be able to access your portal, and anywhere that your phone is at, you should be able to get a text message or information. Any questions? Thank y'all very much.